I love my casa because she's so kind and sweet.
It's fun when my casa brought me food every once in a while. Let's call them emotional support burritos.
One thing my casa taught me was that no matter where you come from or whatever situation you come out of, you can still be whoever you want to be.
The best thing about my casa were her hugs.
My casa means a lot to me because he has been in my life a long time and shows me that he cares.
Without my casa, I would feel sad and alone.
I can always count on my casa because she is only a call or text away.
My casa taught me to be brave.
What I like most about my casa is that he always makes sure to check in with us and he makes sure we have the things we need.
My casa means a lot to me because she was always there for me when I needed her the most.
One thing my casa taught me was that I'm not alone.
My favorite thing about my casa is that she would read to me.
One thing my casa taught me was to express myself and be me.
I can always count on my casa because he's never let me down.
Hello, and welcome to our 13th annual Light of Hope presented by General Mills. My name is Wayne Hamilton, and I have the honor of kicking off this year's event. On behalf of CASA of Northwest Arkansas, I'd like to thank you for joining us. For those of you like me who have attended this event in the past, this year's event will feel a little different. There is something breathtaking about entering a ballroom and seeing hundreds of caring adults who all want to make a difference in a child's life. Adjusting for the times, we are online this year. Being online gives us the unique opportunity to introduce even more people to CASA by hosting watch parties on social media and sharing this video with your friends and family later today. Every child has the right to feel safe, loved, cared for, and an undeniable right to learn and grow into the person he or she is destined to be. When a child enters the foster care system due to abuse or neglect, these rights have been threatened. While the foster care system is full of compassionate lawyers, judges, social workers, and foster families, it is overtaxed. With nearly 1,000 children in foster care in Northwest Arkansas last year, the system lacks the resources necessary to manage the individual needs and rights of every child it serves. Over the next half hour, you will learn how CASA, court-appointed special advocates, mobilizes volunteers like you and me to assist these professionals and stand up for the rights of children in foster care. Before we move forward, I'd like to take a moment to recognize and thank our corporate partners who, despite all our changes this year, have stepped up to sponsor our event. We'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, General Mills. Our benefactor sponsors, the Clorox Company, Coca-Cola, Cox, Drywall Crews, Harps Food Stores, and United Industries. Also, our advocate sponsors, Cargill, Clear Choice Retail, Electronic Arts, Farmers Insurance, Field Agent, the Happy Egg Company, Truity Credit Union, and Unilever. There are additional patron and media sponsors who have also played a critical role in today's program. A complete listing of sponsors may be found on our website. Before I pass you over to our executive director, I have to warn you. Once you hear about CASA, it is hard not to be a part of it. I attended my first Light of Hope 8 years ago, and I immediately connected with the mission and concept that one adult, one compassionate and dedicated adult, can forever change the course of a child's life. 8 years later, I am still fighting for the best interests of children. If you hear the same calling and want to learn how you can serve, please contact the CASA office today. Thank you again for being with us and for opening your hearts and minds to the needs of our children.
Hello, my name is Crystal Vickmark, and I'm the Executive Director of CASA of Northwest Arkansas. It is a pleasure to be with you today. As Wayne shared, children in foster care have faced a lot in their young lives. They're removed from their mom and dad for reasons they don't understand and are placed in a bewildering environment. New faces, new experiences, new schools, and new homes. In a system that serves nearly 1,000 children annually, how can it possibly understand and address the individual needs of every one of these children? That's where a CASA volunteer makes a real difference. They know their CASA's child by face, by name, by favorite color, by birth date. The advocate is there to listen to their children's needs, verify facts, identify resources, and speak up for the child's best interest in court. They stand by the child no matter how many moves or placements and are there to humanize this difficult experience. Why is this so important though? Children who have suffered abuse and neglect are at great risk for poor school performance, delinquency, substance addiction, and suicide. And these negative impact of their adverse childhood experiences doesn't stop when they turn 18. Adults who were child victims have an increased risk for mental illness, unemployment, homelessness, and incarceration. Yet there is a way to mitigate these risks. To improve these children's long-term outcomes, we need to stabilize lives, reduce stress, and promote healthy development through meaningful relationships with caring adults. Thankfully, each can happen when a child is a CASA volunteer. While we know that you would like to hear about our impact directly from one of the children we've served, our primary role is to protect them. And by moving this event online, we can no longer keep their stories safe and secure. So we've made the conscious decision to continue protecting our kids and allow their experiences to be shared by people whom they trust and love, their CASA volunteers. We hope you enjoy hearing directly from the men and women who give their time and hearts to lift up children in need.
A coworker of mine, her mom knew somebody that was a CASA and they just happened to get to talking about it and she came back to work. I actually read something, it was randomly kind of come across and it was like right before she had told me about CASA. And it was to talk about being that person that you needed when you were growing up. And as crazy as it is, there are some things that I can relate to when it comes to my CASA kiddos and the journeys that they've been on. I don't know if it's necessarily a surprise, but one of the things that astounds me still is just the strength and the resilience of the kiddos that we get to help and we get to deal with, because they are usually going through so much. I mean, my very first case, I was super nervous about taking that case. He was a kiddo that had been in care at that point for already 7 years, had hopped around to so many different placements, and the kid was amazingly strong, whether he knew it or not, and just how much that they have been through, but still keep a smile on their face and still try to stay positive, and they are still pushing and fighting, right, to just find that happy place and to live a normal life as much as they can. I still get to keep in contact with them, which is great, but it was actually his adoption day. And I had presented him with a gift. I had written him a letter and given him a photo album with photos that I had been collecting over the time of being his CASA. But I didn't fill up the album, and that was part of the point, because I wanted him to know that this was a part of his life, but the next chapter was getting ready to start. And I wanted him to continue to fill that album up with all the good memories that he was going to be making going forward. And his new adoptive parents had sent me a picture of him on their drive back home where he was reading my letter and getting emotional and talking about what a difference I had made in his life and that I was one of his favorite people. And it was in that moment that I knew that this was something I always had to be a part of, regardless of how that was, so much that I actually got it tattooed on me because I wanted to be able to help in any small way. And for the longest, I didn't, as much as he had been through, I didn't really know if I was making that difference. And to see that and know, and for him to still talk about me and still check on me and want to know how I'm doing, it's been fantastic.
I've been an advocate for 7 years in July, this past July. I've had 14 cases, 24 kids. I think three cases the kids got to go home, and I think 5 children have been adopted. I met him when he was 15. He'd been in and out of care for several times. His history was father in prison, mother unable to care for the child because of drugs. He had lots of anger. When you talk to him about his history, he was smoking pot at 10, addicted to meth by 15, and selling drugs on the street during a whole summer in Eureka Springs to pay his mother's electric bills and things. He went through many placements, many in the hospital treatment sessions, and he ran away 2 months shy of his 18th birthday. I know why he ran away. He was in a group home that he loved, but that group home parent had gotten a job as a teacher, and so he was losing that connection. And I heard from him the next April, needing a place to stay, needing work, but when talking to him, he was still addicted. When he turned 18, he was on his own. So he has bounced back and forth to, see us, and he's changed. He used to be very quiet-spoken, didn't want to say anything very loud. When he'd eat real fast, because he probably had to eat it while it was there. He's turned his life around in the last 6 months. He's quit using drugs, he's met a girl, they're having a baby, but when he started looking good, not skinny, not circles under your eyes and that sort of stuff, I said, his name, "You've really changed. Physically, you've changed. I can tell. You talk with no anger in your voice, and your body looks different. You're pink instead of gray. You've gained weight, you've got muscle. What happened? What happened to you?" And he says, "Well, I finally figured it out. If anything's going to get better in this world, I'm going to have to do it."
Special kid.
Special kid. He's got a long road because he still doesn't have his GED and those kind of things. So we do what we can, my husband and I, to support him or help him or console him or counsel him or whatever that type of support can be called.
I have a good friend who lives in Mena, and he was here 4 or 5 years ago in Fayetteville. So I was asking him why he was in Fayetteville, what he was doing here. And he told me he was a CASA and that he was here visiting his kid. So I looked into CASA here in Northwest Arkansas and did the 101, a little introduction, and said, wow, this looks good. And it was my first case. And there was a little boy and a girl. The girl was, I think, 9 or 10 at the time. The little boy was 6 or 7. I'd found out that they lacked to color. And so I'd taken some coloring books over, and the little boy actually didn't like to color within the lines. He liked to just free draw. So I took some photocopy paper over one time, and so we were just drawing, and he happened to do it, and then he folded it up and handed it to me. And so I opened it up, and it said, "I love you." And of course, that immediately got me right here. I thought, wow. So I got my piece of paper out and I wrote, "I love you" back on it, folded up and handed it to him. And so he opened it up. The look on his face, the first facial expression was of probably surprise and shock. And then, I guess as it kind of sank in, or he understood, then you could see some happiness kind of coming in his face, and just this feeling, this sense of well-being and happiness in his face, and then it just came to this big, broad, beaming smile. And of course, that got me too. And I was thinking about that later, about the shock in particular. And I was thinking, because he was staying with his grandparents, and they were very supportive, loving, but I wondered if the biological mom and the grandparents had ever said those words, actually said the words, "I love you" to him. And to actually see that, he was just, whoa. And that was, I will remember that all my life, and that still gets me.
I previously lived in South Dakota, and I had heard about CASA, but didn't really investigate to see what it was. And so when I moved here for work, 3 of my coworkers were CASAs as well. And one in particular was like, "You have to do this." As scared as I was and nervous, I still went to a 101 class and just couldn't help after I heard the stories that were told there and just seeing what people had to say. I was like, I need to be involved with that.
I was still in high school, and I was scrolling through Facebook, and I came across the CASA Facebook page, and I was like, I want to do this. So I went to the website, and one of the requirements was that I have to be 21. So I was disappointed. And I could not wait to turn 21 because I wanted to become a CASA. One of the brighter moments would be when we helped reconnect 2 boys with their dad. The mom had been hiding the boys, and she was moving from place to place to keep the dad away. And for us, we knew that it was super important for him to be a part of their lives. So the first time they had seen him,
in over 10 years.
Yeah, was at the temporary placement hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't know him. He had actually never seen them in those 10 years. So as the case progressed, we knew that it was something that was going to be super important to us to make sure that they had a relationship with their dad.
I think it was really interesting too to see the dynamic. The older child, so both of these boys were in their teenage years. The older child was one that was very loyal to his mom, and so it was kind of a fight throughout the whole thing. He was also very parentified, so he struggled he loved taking care of his younger siblings, and time away from them created this concern for him. He didn't know how to be a child, and when he got to have this relationship with his dad, he struggled even being there with whether he was being loyal to his mom or not, and whether he was not taking care of his younger siblings. And I think one of the things that was the most impactful for me was having conversations with him and helping him understand that that was his time away where he got to be a child and didn't have to have those responsibilities. And just seeing him open up to that, I think, was probably one of the brightest moments for us.
Well, Polly also had this amazing idea because he was having all these internal thoughts and emotions while he was away from his mom at his dad's. And Polly brought him a journal and said, hey, just write down what you're feeling and this will help you process through that. And that was just a really amazing way to help him continue to work through those hard things for him.
I think the reason that I decided to go through the training was just I've always had a desire to be involved with children in foster care, but never really felt like it was the right time for us to take in foster children of our own. And this, I think CASA was a way for me to get involved in the life of foster children in a different way. I think the time that sticks out to me the most, where I felt like I made a difference, is with this child that I have right now she's 17. When she was 16, she had to go into residential treatment. Of course, then she was taken out of her foster family. She had already been taken from her biological family, all of her siblings, because of that whole, the thing that put her there and how life had just spiraled out of control for her at that time. I visited her pretty regularly while she was in, and we built a pretty special relationship through that time. I think it's different for a child that's in residential treatment than for all of my other children had been in foster home situations. And so you have this other adult advocate that's there. But in residential treatment, you're dealing with therapists and nurses and security guards. I mean, you don't have anyone there advocating for that child. Well, she's just been through a lot. She has basically parented all of her younger siblings, and then she was taken from her mother, and who she loved. Children love their mothers. They love their biological parents no matter what kind of neglect they have experienced. And I think for what makes her so special is she's just wise and mature beyond her years, and she still, in spite of all that she has experienced in her short life, she is so full of love and encouragement for other people. I mean, whenever I spend time with her, she compliments my hair. She looks for ways to encourage me. Sorry. She just has an enormous heart, and she has been deeply wounded.
So when I met Logan, he had 4 kids already, and I didn't have any kids. And so we met and we got married and started discussing, you know, what our future looked like and whether or not we wanted to have children together. And we decided to become foster parents. And we fostered for 3 years, and Tori was our last placement. She was our 6th child. We were fortunate enough to be able to adopt her. And once we were able to adopt her, I knew that our family was complete, but that we weren't done with the foster care community. And so it was just sort of a natural progression to lead into becoming a CASA. The case that we had before this was a 13-year-old girl, and she had everything stacked against her. Her dad had died of a drug overdose, and she was really struggling. She had an older brother that also had a drug problem. That brother had a child that was living in her home at the time. And she was really she was having a hard time being at home and being heard and feeling like she had a place. Through a series of unfortunate events, she ended up in the system, but she had a mother that loved her and made a mistake and was desperate to get her back home. When she came into care, she didn't want to go back home. She said, "Put me in a group home, put me in foster care, I don't care, I'm not going back home." She spent some time inpatient where I visited her multiple times. Again, her mom continued to faithfully visit her and faithfully go through counseling with her and do the work. And it was hard. It was up to 3 times a week at some points. They got through it though, and she went home. And so it was very impactful for me as a mother, having a daughter, to be able to watch that and to watch that relationship repair itself, and to see that mother, how hard she worked to be able to get her daughter back home and to be able to get her daughter to a place where they could coexist as a family. It was very impactful. I don't know if she will always remember me, but I will always remember her.
You can't predict what difference you're going to make. That may be getting back with their parents. It may be going a completely different direction with another family, or if it's simple as getting them involved in an activity during the part of the process that builds a fire in them to get into music or get into athletics or get into art, whatever it may be. You don't know what that difference is going to be, and that's the exciting thing, is that what an advocate can do for a child.
Maybe something like the little boy that I first talked about, the little boy that wrote the note to me. Maybe they just need somebody to tell them they love them and to validate them as a worthwhile human being. Because I don't think a lot of kids have had that. And what a burden to carry all your life.
I'm a better person for being an advocate. I'm just different. But in such a beautiful way, to know that I get to help that child through whatever they're going through so that their light doesn't go out. Oh, it's so important for their light not to go out. To be able to just give them the slightest bit of hope, because hope is such a beautiful thing. And if you can just realize that this is just a stopping point. This is just a roadblock that you've hit, but you're gonna blow past it, and what you're gonna do on the other side is gonna be huge, it's gonna be great. And you've gotta keep that spirit up. You've gotta keep that light open and alive and bright, and know that all of this will fade at some point, and the future's ahead of you.
Hello, my name is Chris Mitchell, and I have the honor of serving as the board president for CASA of Northwest Arkansas. In all honesty, I'm grateful this has been pre-recorded, as it's hard to listen to these stories and not become emotional. I ask you to think for a moment as to what could have happened if those advocates hadn't been there for their CASA kids. It turns out we don't have to wonder. We have asked some of the children. "Without my CASA, I wouldn't be able to control my anger," said Annie, age 7. "Without my CASA, I'd be lost and sad and confused," shared Autumn, age 16. "Without my CASA, I probably wouldn't be here today," said Greg, age 18. Wouldn't be here today. A child in foster care not having a CASA, that's a chance we're not willing to take, and you aren't either. Last year, thanks to your support, 408 CASA volunteers served as a voice for 968 children. This achieved a 5-year strategic goal to place a CASA volunteer in the life of every child in need by the year 2020. Well, 2020 is here, and sadly, our job is not done. Children continue to come into care each and every day. And unfortunately, we're finally seeing the impact of what 5 months of isolation does to the rates of child abuse. 5 months where children were literally held captive at home with abusers without the watchful gaze of a teacher, a family member, or a pastor who could recognize the signs and call the hotline. These children need to be heard too. That is why we're here today, to make sure that every child in care in Northwest Arkansas has their CASA volunteer. There's someone who protects and comforts, cares, and encourages. Please help us today. It costs our organization $1,200 to provide a highly trained and supported CASA volunteer to a child for an entire year. I ask you now to consider how you might sponsor a child today. You may make your gift of any size to CASA in a variety of ways. By texting LOH 2020 to the number 41444, by pushing the donate button on our event page or Facebook, or by mailing us a donation. If you wish to make a longer commitment or split up your donations over the course of the year, please click Make a Pledge on our event page and tell us how you'd like to help. To keep serving every child in foster care in Northwest Arkansas, we need to raise $300,000 through this Light of Hope campaign. 2 very dear friends of CASA, Kara and Brett Biggs, have offered an incredible gift to help us achieve this goal. If together our community raises $250,000 for our life-changing advocacy, the Biggs family will donate an additional $50,000 to CASA. Please help us maximize our impact through your gift today. Every donation, no matter what size, will make the difference in the life of a child. I'd like to take a moment now to recognize how difficult this year has been for many in our community. And we appreciate that not everyone is capable of supporting CASA financially this year. Please know how grateful we are that you continue to champion our children in other ways. With that, we are so glad you joined us for this year's Light of Hope presented by General Mills. There are dozens of young people who would feel lost and struggle to find their way if it were not for CASA. We are grateful for our sponsors, our Light of Hope committee, our table captains, our CASA volunteers, and most of all you for keeping the light of hope shining brightly for them. Thank you.